So I think every week I'm gonna give some loosely put together takeaways. In other words, I'm gonna talk shit about your favorite team as well as my favorite team, and I'm talking a lot of shit about my favorite team, and I'm talking probably even more shit about yours. So Thursday night the game was Dolphins at Cincinnati. I did pick the Bengals to win this game, which is tough as a Ravens fan to do, but I just knew that the Dolphins were gonna cool down and whatnot like that, and as much as I was rooting for Miami to still win the game, it had to happen. And look, Dolphins fans, before you say, well, Tua, y'all were not gonna win that game anyway. Okay, I promise you were not going to win that game anyway. And if you say otherwise, you didn't watch the game. Okay, because two gloves brought a different element to the game, but there wasn't a throw that he failed to make that I was like, Tua would have made that. And yeah, Tua's a better quarterback when it comes to reads and whatnot. And I gotta say, man, I'm happy for Tua for proving everybody wrong, including myself, because I did always say he's got a noodle. He can't be a good quarterback. And I mean, the start he's having, he put up 6 touchdowns against my team. Like, I gotta tip my hat, no matter how he got the touchdowns. But it's really hard for me to call Tua a top 10 quarterback yet, and I think it should be hard for everybody else too. And people will be like, why? Because why can you say things like that about Allen or Mahomes or Lamar? Like, when they're playing good, you can call them like the best quarterback in the league. Well, because they're proven. Guys like them have showed that they can sustain that level of play throughout the whole course of the season. We see teams start hot every single year. It's amazing and an incredible start for Miami, but we have to see it continue. But what I got from this game just gave me confirmation about Miami. They can be considered a top 5 team in the AFC for sure. I put them at 5 and no higher. You could probably make a case for 4. But my point is that just because you beat certain teams early in the season doesn't mean that you are better than them, because they're not a better team than Buffalo, and quite frankly, I don't think they're a better team than Baltimore. I'm sorry. But let's talk about the Baltimore Falcons a little bit. In the premier 1 o'clock Sunday game, Bills-Ravens had me fired up. I was ready to run through a wall before that game. I was so hyped. I was so confident that we were winning that game, and I think that the team was confident they were winning that game in the first half. But again, for the second time in 3 weeks, we've showed a lack of resilience and a little bit of stupidity. But before I go off on my team, let me commend the Bills, applaud their effort. Coming back in a game like that on the road in those weather conditions is really difficult. And I will say I'm kind of glad that, like, y'all were able to defend your title of being the best team in the AFC and probably the best team in the league right now, because if we won that game, people would start to underrate y'all. And that's just a problem because, like, again, it's week 4. Baltimore, oh my gosh, I don't know, man. This, if we doing this all year, I don't know, man. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I could do this. So for those of you that don't know, we were up 20-3 at one point at the end of the second half, okay? There were things that happened at the end of that half that made me so less confident in our ability to win that game. Now, I'm not going to talk about no first half crap because that doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. The bottom line is our offense got shut out in the second half. And if you watch the game, you would look at why and be like, oh, okay. Because while we failed to convert and move the ball at many times, we flipped the field 3 times, and it really wasn't an issue of being able to move the ball. It was just execution, situational football. And I can use that term lightly, but it's just little things that can be cleaned up. But at the end of the day, like, they're going to beat you, and it's like they're part of the game. So it's like there's no, like, nobody's gonna look at that and be like, oh, like, that's okay, you know what I mean? Like, no, it's on nobody but y'all type shit. I'm not gonna pull it up. We either possessed the ball 4 or 5 times in the second half. First drive was penalty ridden. We went 3 and out on a false start to start the thing, and then once we get behind the chains, man, it's consider it done. But that's one drive, okay? The next drive, I believe, was the drive that Rashad Bateman had a drop over the middle, but that's something that you cannot fault in those conditions, especially when you consider the amount of drops that Buffalo had in the first half. So they were just kind of coming back to bite us a little bit. The following offensive drive was the first interception that Lamar threw. It was tipped at the line of scrimmage, which, in some ways you can't fault him, but at the end of the day, you got to get the ball higher. You got to understand that there's a guy there. A pick is a pick is basically what I'm saying. But obviously that ended that drive. And then the following drive, we went 94 yards to like the 1 yard line. And this is the only drive that mattered. And do you guys have any idea who I'm about to pin this loss on? It starts with a J and ends with a on Harbaugh, because this game is on Harbaugh. But Marcus Peters already told y'all that if y'all saw the clip. And it's self-explanatory. Obviously, when you get to the goal line like that, you want to punch it in. But you have 4th and goal at the 3 with 2 minutes left in the game. And the game is tied. You're not losing. Let me emphasize that. The game is tied. So this field goal that you should take gives you the lead. But the arrogance, as well as the lack of trust in the defense to make that decision to go for it on 4th and 3, knowing you can't really run the ball because we haven't been getting a push and it's 4th down. So guess what Buffalo's going to do? Sell out for the pass, and then you force Lamar to throw up a punt because he's not going to throw it away on 4th and goal. Like, that just doesn't make sense. That tells me obviously you don't trust your defense, but that also tells you got outcoached mentally. You were scared of Buffalo, so you made that decision. You were scared, so you made that decision. Because again, the game was tied. It was 20-20. We hadn't scored all second half, but the game was tied. And up to that point, Buffalo has scored 10 points in the half. Like, they got it going, but it's not like they were scorching hot. And literally the possession before was the one where Lamar threw a pick. They were at midfield, and our defense forced a 3 and out, and you don't trust them. Really? And that decision hold the shit out of us, because when they got down to the goal line, instead of them having to score because they needed to take the lead, they were just able to run the clock out and win the game, and our offense didn't get another chance. So good job, John. I'm going to make a video on Harbaugh. I have to, but I can't spend much more time on this game. My takeaway is that the Bills are still the best team in the AFC, probably the best team in the league. Maybe you can argue Philadelphia right now. And I think the Ravens have a top 5 roster. We just got to stop shooting ourselves in the foot and being dumb. I forgot to do the London game, which was technically the first game of the day. Vikings Saints, man. The biggest takeaway I have from this one is that it's relieving to see the Saints actually have some kind of offense when their quarterback doesn't have a broken back. But I also do think they need to look to draft a young quarterback next year and maybe give that a stab. I like Jameis, but I don't know, man. Kind of wasting your time if you ask me. But Minnesota, man, your defense is lackluster, bro. It's been like this for a couple of years now, and it's underperforming in my opinion, because I think that you have the personnel, you're just failing to make a really big impact on the game. Like, because if you're not gonna be a brick wall, you gotta force turnovers and vice versa. And this is the type of defense that I could see forcing a lot of turnovers. And when you don't force Andy Dalton into any interceptions, or when you don't recover any fumbles or anything like that, like that's a problem. That's a problem, because if you don't do it against the Saints offense, I don't know if you're gonna do it in general. And yeah, they looked great against the Packers week 1, so I was optimistic. I was like, hey, this Vikings team, but that kind of ended quickly, because Philly and the number 1 Detroit Lions offense pulled up on y'all. But I really am indifferent about this defense, because like they didn't look bad in Philly either. I don't know, man. I don't know. There also comes a time where the Vikings need to realize or start to view Kirk Cousins as Jimmy Garoppolo in a more passing-friendly system, because that's starting to kind of come to the surface. Like really the epitome of what a pocket passer should be and should do. Almost Matt Ryan-esque in a way, just in terms of technique and fundamentals and doing everything a quarterback should do in the pocket. But understanding he don't got that dog in him and he can only take you so far. And yeah, there's limits to it. And there's things you can do that Cousins will fail to adjust to beat, basically. The Vikings are still a playoff team, though. I will give them that. But are they Super Bowl contenders? I don't know, man. And for the Saints, this is one of those years where you don't necessarily tank. You ride it out and see what happens, because of just how good your defense is. And that could carry you to the playoffs if Jameis comes back healthy, or if Andy Dalton continues to play at an adequate level. So, I don't say you scrap this season. You're definitely not favorites to win your division or make the playoffs, but it certainly can happen with a defense like that, because that's a top 3 defensive unit without a doubt. Seahawks-Lions game of the year? The fact that the Lions have played the way they've played through the first 4 weeks and they found a way to be 1-3 is just the most Lions shit ever, man. But it's obvious. Everyone sees it. You just need a good defense. And I'm not going to lie, I thought this Lions team was going to be really balanced. I thought it was going to have one of the, like a top 10 defensive unit and like the 20th ranked offensive unit or some shit like that. But I was completely wrong. These teams are just weird, man. I don't really have much to take away from this game, because this isn't a game that you can take much away from. Like, I understand the Lions have played everybody close, and the Seahawks are obviously 2-2. They beat the Broncos week 1. But despite the terrific production of Jared Goff and this Detroit Lions offense, this is still just a matchup of two bad teams with shitty defenses beating up on one another, and there's not much to take away. And maybe I'm not giving the Lions enough credit, but they are still 1-3. I'll give them the credit when they start to string together some of them W's, you know what I'm saying? The New York Jets at the Pittsburgh Steelers. Shout out the Jets, man, 2-2. Hey, good start to the year. Love to see it. Jets defense don't look too bad. Now, obviously, that's a lackluster Steelers offense, but they haven't looked bad really through any game except for Cincinnati there. They look good week 1 against us. So we'll see if Zach Wilson can start, getting some chemistry with Garrett Wilson and Elijah Moore, because those are two really good receivers on the outside. And if he can start utilizing them to their abilities, then they could actually get something going here with this offense. And look, Pittsburgh, I know we got beef at all times, and I know I'm probably your biggest hater. But if y'all were a good team, I would say it. And right now, y'all are the second worst team in the AFC based off of everything. You guys are the second worst team in the AFC, only in front of Houston. And the Ravens are still going to somehow find a way to lose to y'all at least once this year. Fuck. But I will say I'm glad to see you guys put Pickett in the game, give him a chance. I like Pickett. I will say, not he's in Pittsburgh, so we automatically got beef. But I'm saying I think he'll be a solid quarterback for him. I'm not going to lie. It scares me. But maybe scared isn't the right word, and not this year. I'm a little bit, worried for the long run. If he is a good quarterback, then damn, we got to deal with Pickett, you know what I mean? Because, there's already good quarterbacks in this division. But damn, y'all ain't knowing without TJ Watt. Golly. Oh my goodness. And what's crazy is that, we all know the whole thing with Tomlin doesn't have a losing season, and this might be the first year we have a losing season. And, Harbaugh and Tomlin, they've been around for both a long time. A lot of times they get compared because they're rival teams, and they're both successful coaches. They both have Super Bowls, and they both have good overall career records, right? With a good track record of being able to keep their teams relevant. That's the big thing I see with both of them, is that no matter how bad the rosters are, they be competing. But somehow without Tomlin doing really anything good this year, and I wouldn't say he's necessarily doing anything bad, but Harbaugh is taking his name out of that conversation. And again, I'm going to make a video on John Harbaugh, but damn. And like I said, y'all are probably going to still somehow find a way to beat us at least once this year, because that's just the way it goes. But otherwise, scrap the year, man. Just scrap it. Bears, Giants, OKG, man. Battle of the two most respectable 2-1 teams in the league. What you talking about? The Giants are and were just the better team on both sides of the ball. I think people kind of assume that coming in with the way the Bears passing offense has looked. And Daniel Dimes has just shown more. And while the O-line is still questionable, I like what they did. And this is what I was saying, if there's anybody in the league, young quarterbacks that are closest to be able to emulate what the Bills do with Josh Allen, Daniel Jones with his mobility can do it a little bit. So it's good that Brian Daboll is the coach over there, because he's going to have that scheme in place for him. And when you establish the run game with Saquon Barkley, you can do exactly what they just did. Put Danny Dimes under center, and then just have him either hand it off outside handoff, or it's a play action, and he can roll to the complete opposite side. It gives him a deep drop, and it makes the defense have to make a choice and stay home, which just gives Saquon Barkley an even bigger hole. Because that's how you overcome having a lackluster passing offensive line, is you need to stay ahead of the chains, and you need to establish some kind of run game, and then you need to give your quarterback a deep drop. That's it. Chicago really some cheeks, though. And as much as I do think it is partially scheme and whatnot, there does come a point where, you have to stop giving Justin Fields excuses and say, all right, hang on a minute. The Colts are in deep water. I mean, the Titans situation has been bad. It's bad as it is. Losing A.J. Brown, it just kind of seems like the Titans need to turn a new era. And the fact that they're 2-2, commend them, because they beat solid teams and that are better than their record in the Colts and in the Raiders. And I gotta say, their defense has looked not too bad, pretty darn good if you ask me. And they're gonna need a really good defense this year if they want to be any kind of playoff team. But the formula is simple for Indianapolis, and they know it, they understand it. There's one thing they want to do, and that's run the ball. That's get Jonathan Taylor going. And obviously last year that's what they built their whole team off of, but if you can't do that, you're not going to have any success. And look, we forget that this Colts team started 1-5 last year, but realistically, they should be 0-3-1 right now. They really shouldn't have won that game last week. They won basically off of special teams and a big play by their defense, which is great. You love to see that. but you can't rely on that every week from this Colts team. Similar to Derrick Henry, the goal should be 20 carries, 150 yards every week. Is it time to panic in LA yet? For both teams, but I'm talking about the Chargers right now. Yes, I understand. They won the game, but there comes a point where you have to look at this defense and be like, oh shit, because while the personnel is there and they brought in a better pass rush, the problem last year was they couldn't stop the run, and that continues to be the problem, and it seems to have only gotten worse. And on top of that, now they're getting more and more banged up. They're losing important, valuable pieces on defense. And in the AFC West, as well as just in the AFC in general, that's an issue. I'm not saying that the Chargers aren't going to make the playoffs, and I am confident they are going to hit stride during the season at some point, probably soon, but I just don't think they can be Super Bowl contenders nor favorites to win the West with that defense. There's not a whole lot to say about this Houston team because, they haven't won a game and their expectations aren't very high, other than they fight. They show up every week, and they've given every team they played a run for their money. And while they haven't had the hardest strength of schedule, they've been in one-score games for every game up until this one, where they only lost by 10 and were able to hang 24 on a team that, again, is supposed to be considered a contender. Browns, Falcons, damn, Cleveland, damn. I think the Falcons are a better team than people give them credit for. Maybe not on the defensive end, but probably on the offensive end, but Cleveland, there's just no reason you should lose that game, even with Jacoby Brissett under center. And this is my favorite thing about being in the AFC North this year, is that despite the fact that my coach is being a dud, the only good coach in the division this year is on the team that probably doesn't have a chance or has the worst chance, and that's Pittsburgh and Tomlin. Zach Taylor and Stefanski have both been some goofies, and I think the Browns are again failing to be coached well, and that's the problem, because I think both last year and the year before that they had the best roster in our division, definitely last year, and of course they just underperformed, and the year before that obviously they did actually make some noise and made the playoffs and whatnot, and were almost able to beat the Chiefs, led by Chad Henne. But that was 2 years ago, and it's just only been downhill since then. But the Predator might be able to come back and carry. We'll see how he looks. Cordero Patterson is one of my favorite players in the league, so I'm devastated to see him go down. He's just so exciting to watch now that he's a running back, and he's basically like Walmart Debo, and that shit's amazing. But shout out the Falcons for going to get Mariota to be a filler guy for this squad for this year while they figure out their situation with Ritter and, or what they want to do. It was a good move. Dallas, Washington, Cooper motherfucking Rush. Dallas's pass rush is something to be reckoned with, a force to be reckoned with. Now, they've faced two bad O-lines these past 2 weeks, but I think they're also considered to be as bad as they are because of what Dallas did to them. Now, Philly had its way with the Commanders last week, or prior to Dallas playing them, but we also saw that one coming. Remember, this is a Dallas team that after their week 1 performance and after Dak's thumb injury, everybody immediately counted out. So you got to give them props for their resilience. And Cooper Rush is in this bitch being a motherfucking veteran. He just making the throws, my guy. He just making the plays to win. And that's what you love to see. He just understands the game enough for you to be confident with him being in the backfield while you're waiting for your quarterback to get back. Washington's just all over the place, man. I see that common theme with Wentz teams. They just don't have an identity. They don't know if they want to be pass happy or they're trying to get the run. It's just like they don't have, it seems like they just don't have enough in either category. I already mentioned the offensive line. That's probably their biggest struggle, is right there, the O-line. Wentz doesn't have awful weapons. Obviously Scary Terry, Curtis Samuels play really well. And you'll hear me use this term a lot, but their defense has been just lackluster. They haven't done anything. They haven't made an impact on the game, and that's the biggest problem. Because I think this is a defensive unit that for the past 2 years, people have kind of been expecting it to turn a leaf as one of the top units. And, obviously centered around Chase Young, but they got some good pieces over there. And I think they want to be a defensive first team, or at least a really good defensive team, but for whatever reason, it's falling through. Jaguars, Eagles. I'll start with the Eagles, man, because, look, only undefeated team left, and, for good reason. This team is complete. Very, very, very complete. You gotta love what Jalen Hurts has been able to do, and, just managing the game. Even in a game like this where he's not putting up phenomenal numbers, he's still able to manage it and eventually get the job done. And their defense has, been great, obviously, to start this year. They're a combination of being a brick wall, but also being a big play defense. And, of course, they have a terrific pass rush. Darius Slay and company out in coverage is doing an amazing job. So, like I said, really just a complete team. But on to Jacksonville, would it be outlandish to say that this was a battle of the two most complete teams in the league. Because I don't think this Jacksonville team is just good. I think this team is spooky. Like, I think this team is going to make noise all year and be a problem for anybody who sees them. They're solid on both sides of the ball. They have a good scheme. I like their tactics. They've been able to run the ball very well throughout the entirety of the year. They're, like I said, they're putting up points on everybody, and their defense has playmakers that are stepping up in big situations. The Jaguars should be the pick to win the AFC South. It's not a question to me. They're the best team. And shout out Sunshine, Trevor Lawrence. Even though he didn't have a great game, still has played well to start the year. And when I call the Jags a complete team, I mean they're more of a really well-rounded and really balanced team. You know, it's hard to say that they have, like, the best roster in the league or the best roster in the AFC. Like, you know, there are holes, things that they're missing. But, like, they don't have, like, any gaping holes, is basically what I'm saying. It's got to be relieving for the Cardinals to see them get some offensive production, both on the ground and in the air, because, I mean, it's just been rough these first few weeks for Arizona, I'm not going to lie, and I'm still not a believer, man. Their offense just isn't explosive enough to have that mid of a defense. You know, their offensive line has not played well, and it seems like their scheme and play calling and their identity is just kind of all over the place. They don't know what they want to do or, you know, what's most effective. It seems like they're really missing D-Hop, even though D-Hop wasn't too productive last year. They're missing D-Hop. They're missing Christian Kirk, that possession guy. Because, like, I've seen it with Hollywood Brown. And, like, you know, statistically, he put up, you know, the best game of his career last week. Had another solid game this week. You know, he's been the number one option. But, I mean, listen, it's not difficult to blanket a passing defense that, you know, on the outside when your number one option is Marquise Hollywood Brown. Because you know what he's trying to do, and he's not the best possession receiver because he's little and his hands can be unreliable. But Arizona did really need this win, so it is good for them to get it. Maybe they can gain some momentum because they just have not looked good to start the year, and I don't see them doing anything. Carolina, are you sick of Baker Mayfield yet? You should be. He said keep booing because when the shit turns around, you know, whatever, it'll be the same guys in the locker room, but it's not going to turn around, so it's a damn shame. Yeah, it's time to put, what's his name in there? Corral? Is that who y'all drafted? Broncos country, this is a problem. Relieving to see some kind of offensive production, but the numbers do not tell the whole story with this one. The offense was still very much stagnant and failing to produce in very necessary times. Hence the loss. It just feels like they're scrambling the whole game. And I mean, quite literally, because that's basically what Russ was doing. And now you lose Javonte Williams. The rushing game already wasn't terrific, and it just got worse because you lost your guy. But god damn, Josh Jacobs tore y'all up, bro. What the hell? We're talking about a Raiders team that hasn't really been able to run the ball, so that's a problem. And I will say, as much as I rip on the Ravens coach, I'm glad we don't pick coaches like the Broncos, because goddamn, Nathaniel Hackett, man, you already on the hot seat. And obviously a much needed win for the Raiders, a team that's better than their 1-3 record, and I think ironically the Broncos are worse than their 2-2 record, which is crazy to say because they have Russell Wilson and a really good supporting cast, but I just don't know. They are failing to figure it out. And I mean, obviously this doesn't, you know, make the Raiders a really good team again. They still have some woes, a lot of woes actually, such as Derek Carr does not want to look at anybody other than Devontae Adams, and he's predictable. But it's got to be relieving to see Josh Jacobs really get going. I mean, like, he's been okay because he really hasn't had a choice, but this was a very, very good performance, a dominating performance, a controlling performance from your running attack. It's a weird division that AFC West is, which through it all, it's crazy. All these moves, and the Chiefs are probably going to end up still winning the division. Whoa, Green Bay, you almost dropped one you shouldn't have dropped there, man. I don't know what to think about either of these teams, to be honest. It is unfortunate, like really unfortunate for the NFC North that the Packers have found a way to still be 3-1 at this point, because they're going to get better as the season goes on, and that's kind of inevitable. But damn, if they don't get better, they got some problems, because this team is not very, very good right now. Every week they've had some kind of gaping flaw, and every week it's been different. The Packers, that is. I've seen their defense get carved up. I've seen their defense look phenomenal. I've seen their offense not necessarily look phenomenal yet, but I've seen them look god-awful, and I've seen them look okay. But it is going to come down to the defense with this team, because Rodgers understands that he can only do so much with his receiving core right now before it like costs them a game with turnovers and whatnot if they're trying to do too much. And it just has to be game managing, staying in front of the chains. Obviously that starts with the running game, but Rodgers understands his situation and that This offense isn't going to be explosive, especially for this, in this early in the season. But like I said, they're going to get better. They just are going to need some defensive support, especially for the time being. So when your defense comes out with a game plan like they had against Minnesota, it's terrifying. It's scary because not only did they get torched, but it just seemed like they weren't ready, and it just wasn't a good game plan, and they failed to adjust. But again, flashes of being terrific. As for New England, I don't think anybody expected their passing offense to be terrific this year. They didn't really add any significant pieces. Obviously, Devontae Parker, they're hoping to be good, but other than last week against Baltimore, he hasn't really been good at all. Obviously, they want to play defense and stay ahead of the chains with the run game, and the run game looked pretty good, but their defense has been disappointing these last 2 weeks, like really disappointing, because this should be a defensive-minded team. And I understand that week 3 they played a really good Ravens offense. Our Ravens offense has been really good to start the year, and then this week they played one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. But especially this week, I expected a better performance, and it's just unacceptable, because I feel as though they should be riding on their defense, and if they have any chance this year. Some people would argue that they did exceed expectations in this game on both sides of the ball, but I don't know, man. I don't know, because the bottom line is it doesn't look much different with Big Mac in there, and that's just how it is. And now from a divisional standpoint, it seems as though the Jets have caught up to them. They might even be a better team now. I would probably say so, and so they definitely have more potential. So that's tough for New England. That really is. The night game, Chiefs Buccaneers, man. So at the end of week 3 through 3 weeks, the MVP conversations were Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, those 3 really, right? And I ain't hear not one person say Patrick Mahomes. And I'm talking not even after this week, even before this week. Patrick Mahomes not in that conversation at all. And my question is, why? You lose your number 1 receiver on that outside, especially a guy like Tyreek Hill, who is a one-of-one generational talent. And you basically lose no offensive production at all. I'm telling you right now, with Kansas City, we're looking at the modern day Patriots. Obviously, it looks completely different, and they do it differently, and it's all completely different, but so long as Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes are on that team, on that roster, that team is going to compete. They're going to compete. It doesn't matter who's out there. What I'm saying is they just get it, man. They just get it. They find ways. They understand the game. And right now, the MVP race to me is Allen, Mahomes, Hurts, Lamar, in that order. They just hung 41 on a defensive unit that was considered to be the best in the league through 3 weeks. Now on the other end, as far as Tampa Bay, I think you take more good out of this game than bad. Because like I said, the defense has been phenomenal through the first 3 weeks. It's just been the offense that's been really stagnant. And I mean, you played one of the best quarterbacks in the league. So look, you don't want to hang or give up 41. But, like, if you're going to do it to any team, it makes sense that you would do it to Kansas City. And Brady got his weapons back, and he started operating again. So that's just a really good sign. Obviously, the Chiefs' defense isn't, like, terrific. But let me tell you something, man. Chris Jones is just one of the most underappreciated players in the league. He's one of my favorite players in the league. He just does so much for that Chiefs. If Chris Jones wasn't there, that Chiefs defense would be the 32nd ranked defense in the league. Promise you. But because of Chris Jones, they're just mid. And lastly, we got the Monday night game, Rams 49ers. I asked, is it time to panic in LA earlier, referring to the Chargers, and it's really not for them. It's probably time to panic for the Rams. First of all, on the defensive side of the ball, right? Because that's what they're really supposed to make them. I mean, obviously, the Stafford and Kupp-led offense last year was wonderful. But we all know it's this defensive unit. But the problem is that right now, this defense is really just Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey and a bunch of bumps, like mid players, and they're getting exposed for it. I'm going to be honest. Like, they didn't play a bad game against the Cardinals, but you have to understand we're talking about the reigning Super Bowl champions. Their standards are through the roof, and everybody can see that this Rams offense is just one-dimensional, straight up. Like, that's it. That's really it. It's Cooper Kupp and Cooper Kupp. They're missing Whitworth and company. They're missing Von Miller. It's just not looking good for LA. It's really not. I am certainly picking San Francisco to win that division. Looked a lot better for Jimmy G. Debo's a dog. Defense stepped up. Offensive line is still great. You will definitely take that kind of production from Jeff Wilson Jr. every week, man. That's the kind of win you want if you're the Niners. That's how you expect to win. That's how you want to win. And just like last year and the year before the year before they were injured, but the year they made it to the Super Bowl, this is a team that's built for the playoffs on paper. Now, will Jimmy G come through? Will he deliver? That's the question mark. But their ability to run the ball and play defense, that's what you want to do in the playoffs. That's what they can do. But okay, this is not going to be a 30-minute video every time, all right? I don't know if I'm going to do every game. I wanted to establish where I'm at with each team since this is the first time I'm doing this. And I'm probably going to put the Ravens game, whoever they play, at the back of the video because I'll have the most to say. Maybe I'll even, I don't know. Also, I didn't mention it in the video, but bear with, the mic quality is obviously not terrible, but there's background noise. I'm having a bunch of software issues that I'm still trying to work out. Bear with me. Yeah, but I'll be back.